Good afternoon. Welcome to Sunday Live Q&A. Today, stress, judgment, guilt, and fear, the enemies of conscious growth. Today is Sunday, November 11th. It is 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we are on the Awaken the World YouTube channel. And of course, my name is Garhen. Hello, Jennifer. Nice to see you. Jennifer is here already. You usually beat us here. And Debbie is as well. Hello, Debbie. Nice to see you again. So I just wanted to say what a great pleasure it was to meditate together this morning. It was a beautiful meditation. And Kim had a great nap. Awesome. Yeah, I think, Kim, you end up working a lot of night shifts in the healthcare field, if I am correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, you sometimes need your sleep. Yeah, no, I was outside after the meditation and just sitting with the birds in the backyard, the chickadees. For years now I've been feeding them, and they come and sit and chit chat with me, and we have a lot of fun out there. It was very peaceful, actually. Really enjoyed it. So, today we're going to talk about some things that are in appearance in opposition to that peace. And this is what this discussion is going to be all about today. I'm going to take another minute, though, to allow for anyone else to come online. It was mentioned to me that I typically dive into the subject very quickly, and some people are not quite as prompt. And that's totally understandable, and I apologize for that. I'll take an extra minute and share an anecdote or something first. And Terry is here as well. Hello, Terry. So that's fantastic. It's so good to see you all again. And, our day here is a mix of sun and cloud, and right now we're heading into a little bit of sunshine, and it's fresh outside, and we have our beautiful tuned Woodstock wind chimes, which produce these amazing healing resonances, and it's quite sublime, actually. It's just one of those beautiful Sunday afternoons, and I'm so grateful to be here with you today. So perhaps now we will delve into our topic, and today we're going to talk about the enemies of conscious growth. And again, I feel it necessary always to point out that we're talking about words and labels. None of it's actually talking about the truth. A good one, Terry. Have to stop meeting like this. Yeah, really. And when we're talking about words and labels, we're just finger pointing. We're just pointing in the general direction of. That's really what we're doing. So keep that in mind, allow yourself to be open, and really, as always, do not take what I say as some sort of gospel, okay? I am not to be put on a pulpit. I do not pretend to be on a pulpit. Look and see what resonates with you. Look and see what fits with your experience. You will know something that resonates with you when you hear it. You'll feel it inside. One of the first things we're going to talk about is evolution, and the understanding that evolution and life are truly inseparable. As a matter of fact, life is evolution. Life is never-ending growth, change at every level. We are so used to looking at our bodies, and to our mind, the changes in our appearance happen very gradually. But in all truth, most of the material of your body at a quantum level has been totally replaced within 7 days. And at a physical level, every single bit of it is replaced once a year. So you are always changing, always evolving. And this evolution is a mirror in the physical realm of our spiritual or conscious evolution, the evolution of our being. And I was contemplating a post that someone had put up the other day in relation to this, and they were talking about the idea that no book, no guru, no spiritual teacher, no person like myself is ever going to be able to heal you, if heal is the word we're going to use. What needs to be healed per se, and again, I really do balk at the use of that word, but we'll go ahead and use it because the post had used it, is the misunderstanding of what we are. And that occurs deep within ourselves. We have our own key to our own lock. And when we unlock this lock, that offers a certainly visible appearance of physical healing on many levels, including a stronger disposition and more liveliness and more energy, because you're unlocking the hidden reserve, the wellspring of what you are. But more importantly, you understand and cease to balk at the change. You can't escape it. Kelly and I were talking about it today, about, how people don't like change. So if you're going to change something, you have to introduce it very slowly and gently, and people get upset. Why don't you go for the word heal? Well, I'll tell you why. Heal to me, Debbie, is an idea that there is something intrinsically wrong or broken. And there never is. It all comes down to a misunderstanding of what we truly are, a misinterpretation of what we truly are. To use healing is a word for me that sits very much in the physical realm and has to do with, I can certainly apply it to the concept of I have a broken bone and that broken bone has to heal. But when it comes to my being as a consciousness, I am very much aware that I am already complete and whole. And what am I indeed healing is the idea that I'm not whole. Or as Kelly says, getting into alignment or out of alignment, right? Into alignment with the truth of yourself or out of alignment with us. Stress is a big part of this, and this is one of the main factors of stress is our own mind's lack of willingness to allow change, to be okay with change. You see, the ego really likes to have things just the way it likes it. So whenever it finds itself in a situation where things have grown comfortable and it finds its environment to be acceptable on most levels, of course, it's always going to have something to complain about, but that becomes part of it. We start to generate this stress within our own minds over the idea that to change any part of this is going to lead to something we don't like, or taking away that thing we do like. And this initial stress is all involved around something that you have no chance to avoid, and that is change. The way you feel and think today will be supplanted and subsumed by a different way of feeling and thinking down the road. It will change and come and go like the weather in many situations. This is all part of the natural evolution of consciousness that's going on universe-wide, that is being reflected here. Integration, Debbie says sometimes the word integration is used. This makes more sense. Like you say, it doesn't imply that we need fixing because we are broke. And that's exactly it. I try to avoid the labels and words that would give some sense of the untruth of our existence. I would rather stick with that gives the truth, the integration of what's already there, really. So we manufacture this stress. And, as I said, I've spoken with group members who have become aware that, actually the stress wasn't really in the environment because I'm not in that environment and I still have the stress. I'm manufacturing it. And that's the truth. What stress is at its core is a pushing up against what is. That is the only real way to delineate it in its simplest form. So we create stress when we push up against what is, what's in existence. It is manufactured, of course, totally within you, totally within your own mind, and it is mostly based upon unexamined expectations. And I'm going to give a very simple example to illustrate the point. And again, albeit this is a very simple example, we've all done it at one time or another, whether consciously or unconsciously, if you think about it. You're walking down the sidewalk and you look up and someone's approaching, and you smile at that person. They don't smile back. They don't make eye contact with you, and they walk right by you. Now, oftentimes what happens is in your smiling to them, you have a unexamined expectation that they are going to smile in return. And when they do not smile in return, or they make eye contact with you and do not smile, very often a judgment will rise about that person. Well, they're not very nice, or they must be in a grumpy mood, or whatever the case may be. And we've all done it, if not maybe recently, maybe in lower states of consciousness. This is one very simple example of how unexamined expectations create a reality that is, frankly, only ours. That other person may have very valid reasons for not smiling. Everything from having recently lost a loved one, to have lost a job, to having anxiety and walking early in the morning to avoid contact with people. You just don't know. And we're very prone to carrying these unexamined expectations, especially around ourselves. And this is where we develop the most stress. Now, keep in mind, I am not saying to leave yourself in what you would call an externally stressful environment, because you have to pay respect to the state of consciousness you're in right now. You have to be willing to accept where you're at. Myself, I find it possible for me to venture out from my place of sanctity, of peace and tranquility and harmony and balance, out into the real world, out into what I would call society, okay? Out into the physical manifestation, and interact within larger communities like Vernon for a specific length of time. And then feel a requirement to return, to recharge, to regroup, in order to give others around me the best of me. I do that objectively without judgment in order to avoid creating stress. Now, that stress is all internal. It is my decision, my choice, one way or another, to allow the externality, the physical realm, the illusion, the environment I'm in, to dictate what I'm going to choose to feel about it and think about it. This is where stress is born out of. The worst aspect of stress is that it actually ties all the other enemies, judgment, guilt, and fear, and binds them together to fight against you, to fight against your conscious growth. And keep in mind, life is growth. You're going to grow consciously or unconsciously. The beauty about conscious growth is problems begin to turn into puzzles. Situations that would have created stress are seen now joyfully as opportunities to expand and to grow and to experience something new. Always letting go. Letting go is not a noun. Letting go is active. It is a moment by moment decision to let go and flow with that evolution. Never-ending change. Never-ending evolvement of your conscious being manifesting itself into this physical realm. The last and largest and most easily missed right within our own language, are the two words that we should really get rid of completely. And I just used one of them: should and should not. When we live from a point of view of should and should not, we are already engaging in the second of our enemies against our own selves and out into the environment around us, into our work situations. You know, we judged the person walking by us. They should have smiled back. Or we should not have done this. In truth, there are really no should and should nots. There is that which you would do and the consequences that would arise naturally out of it. Then those are what we typically judge. So, how do we deal with stress? The biggest way to deal with stress is to understand from whence it comes. And that is within our own thought processes. We have to examine our thought processes. And this is going to be part of our one-day retreat on Saturday when we have our 12-hour live retreat. One of the exercises will be looking at our thought processes. So I would certainly invite you to that. On to judgment. The next big aspect, an enemy of conscious growth, if we're going to use that word, because as I said, you're going to grow either way. The difference is whether your growth is unconscious and you feel you're buffeted and pushed around by life, or whether your growth becomes conscious and you ride along with life. You know, rafting down the river of life, allowing the current to carry you, stopping wherever the raft chooses to land and exploring, looking for the gift waiting. Judgment. You know, judgment begins with our parents. We look to our parents and we look to their judgment upon us. And they do so unconsciously in most cases. But we are trained into judgment. And then if we come out of religious circles, judgment is trained into us at a larger level yet, the level of a creator, of a father figure, an eternal, overpowering father figure, God. Judgment permeates our lives, and a lot of it comes from unconscious programming. The programming built into us that our society builds into us, that our family environments built into us. And this programming has value. Its value is to show you and to help you to awaken. You have to remember, you chose the circumstances of your existence here. You chose the basic outline of it. All the important things, all the necessary things, you planned them all down in incredible detail. And you did so to give yourself the opportunity to wake up. This unconscious programming brings you to a point where you, one day, out of sheer frustration in a lot of cases, or a big egoic loss, like the breaking up of a relationship, or the loss of a close loved one, or the financial disaster, or a physical health issue, whatever the case may be. Oftentimes, it takes life baseball batting us to the back of the head with that titanium front-loaded baseball bat. We judge our existence and we judge the existences of others around us, first and foremost, based on this unconscious programming. You know, most of us unconsciously have a built-in respect/fear for someone in a uniform, someone with perceived power over us. And we've been programmed into that. In the same way, dare I say it, that Remembrance Day is more and part of that programming. And you know, as a retired soldier, I think I have the right to say this. Okay, But Remembrance Day is nothing more than indoctrination into the idea that war is a good idea and necessary and just, that we're justified in doing it. One day a year, we honor the dead and the fallen, and the other 365, all the other people who are still alive and suffering the long-term effects of being in war are, for the most part, okay, really quite forgotten about by society in general. And no one really thinks twice that, wait a minute, why do we need to have dead anymore? And I am not judging this. I am simply making an observation based upon what our society says and what our society demonstrates. One day out of the year, it's in the news everywhere. The other 364 days of the year, you hardly will see hide nor hair of it. The unconscious programming, of course, leads to our judgments on almost every aspect of our existence. And this is where we have to really begin to look and see from whence our judgments rise and whether or not our judgments are valid or not. And most of this, again, comes from false expectations. Expectations that society has bred into us, expectations that we have bred into ourselves, that we've accepted from others about who we should be or what we should be. You know, we have a neighbor who said to me 4 years ago, if my family and I are not in our own home in 5 years, there's something very wrong with me. That was 4 years ago. 5th year is next year. What has he done to himself in this judgment? Kim says, Remembrance Day tries to glorify but doesn't address the after effects. Child of a Vietnam vet who was extreme. I didn't experience abuse thanks to a vet, but I am one myself, and I know that in lower states of consciousness, I was quite abusive to society in general around me. I mean, we simply don't need it anymore. We really don't. And this is it. The worst, however, is the fact that we tend to see only the external when we judge. Again, in the example of the person walking by us who doesn't smile, we see that they don't smile, and we're just judging the very thinnest layer that we're looking at. Perhaps a closer observation would have revealed that their eyes were red and they had recently been crying. Nothing has stopped me in the past, and I encourage you, don't let it stop you, to, when you notice a stranger's clearly in distress, to be willing to say, hey, do you need a hug? Do you need someone to talk to? A total stranger who isn't going to judge you? We need to be that to ourselves. We need to allow ourselves the right to stop engaging in the self-judgment that has been programmed into us. The idea that you're not enough. In Kelly's case, Kelly makes a great example. I love being married to her because she's just a living example, as we all are. In Kelly's case, it was the idea that she needed a man to make her complete, that she wouldn't be whole unless she was married. And, I work still to this day to totally eradicate that idea from her, to instead show her that she is totally complete and so very whole and capable. Each of us were born into this world. At the moment of our birth, you were whole and complete, and you had all the tools you needed for this entire journey then, and they cannot be taken away from you. Now, how do we look at self-judgment as opposed to honesty with oneself? And this is very important because honesty with oneself is not as easy as it would seem, as again, Kelly will attest. Am I picking on you today? Do you think I'm picking on you? She's not answering me. She's just typing. Uh-oh. Yes. I'm sorry, honey. No, I'm not. I'm not. Honesty with oneself. This is the big one. You know, what happens with self-judgment, okay, is we measure ourselves in terms of guilt. And funny enough, this is the third of the four enemies of conscious growth. And we can begin to see how they're all actually tied together in a big knot. Okay, so we use that programmed self-judgment based on societal expectations, which we've not examined, false expectations, expectations perhaps of our family, our friends, those around us. You know, we were walking yesterday and I said to Kelly, because Kelly gets a little frustrated sometimes, and she says, I just wish that somebody would get it. And I said to her, honey, when your consciousness comes up, when your consciousness rises, and rises a whole leap at a time, all of a sudden, there's a lot less people in the world who are going to be able to understand where you're at. That's why every text mentions that the journey is very solitary at first. Debbie says, yeah, exactly, Kim. Okay, let's deal with Kim first. Sorry. I was more awakened at 3 than I am now. That's the nail on the head. Up until our sense of I is firmly entrenched around ages of, well, these days about 12 years old, you are fully awake when you come into this world. You are part of everything, and you know everything is part of you. You know, and you babble about it incessantly, but no one listens. And Debbie says, it's there in religion too. Yeah, I am not worthy so much as to gather up the crumbs under your table. Communion service said yes, exactly, right? Or go into the Old Testament where, you know, mankind should be ground underfoot. God made a terrible mistake in making us, right? Kind of funny. We'll leave that sort of discussion for another one, though. Honesty with oneself. This has to happen beyond the level of guilt. And we're going to come back to honesty because it's very important. But what we typically do is we judge ourselves and we feel guilty about it. And guilt, as I said, is another one of these nasty little enemies that comes against our conscious growth. The biggest thing about guilt is that it has it serves nothing at all. It only hinders us. It has no positive value to it outside of freezing us into place until we finally figure it out. There is no way out. Yeah, the guy was having a bad day when he wrote it. You're not kidding. He probably had a bad piece of burnt toast, you know. You can just see some, yeah, okay. We'll leave that one alone. But that's the thing about guilt, okay? And the only way it does serve us is that it locks us into place. Guilt immobilizes you. There is no way out of guilt. No way out of guilt. Guilt offers no solution. We are unconsciously driven to feel guilty, and this plays big into religion, okay? Especially if you're from I was brought up young in the Catholic faith. I don't think there is a more guilt-ridden bunch out there than the Catholics, really. And I say that with total compassion in my heart. I was one at one point, and I tell you, I had blisters from the number of Hail Marys. I wore out rosaries after confession. But the thing about guilt is that it doesn't allow any movement. It doesn't allow any forward momentum to occur. It doesn't allow any Oh, there was a lot of Hail Marys. Oh, a lot of Hail Marys. Let me tell you. A lot of the Lord's Prayer. You know, I mean, man, oh man, oh man. Kim knows exactly what I'm talking about, don't you, Kim? And you know, on top of it, I was an altar boy, okay, which only tended to make things worse. So this unconscious guilt that we pile upon ourselves, of course, immobilizes us. It truly does. It holds us in place. It doesn't offer a way forward. And that is the only benefit in guilt. We typically choose, yeah, I still use them as a habit. Yeah, I've actually switched to, I've switched to a mala, you know, the non-Catholic version of the rosary. So we typically choose to let others make us feel guilty, okay? And that's what we call it. We say that someone else made us feel guilty, when in truth it is ourselves that are feeling guilty. And the reason we're feeling guilty has to do with our own thought processes again. The way we look and the way we judge things. There is a total difference between guilt and responsibility. Yeah, it's funny. You know, Kim says she wanted to be a nun while I was being groomed for the priesthood. I was. The only thing that stopped that, and at the time, believe it or not, I hated my mother for it. They wanted to send me to a specialized school over in Germany. I was going to get an education on behalf of the Catholic Church and then be put into seminary school and have all my education paid for and then become a priest. And she wouldn't let me go. These days, I'm glad that she didn't. Although I've always thought I would have had a lot of fun getting into exorcisms. So, you know, again, the big difference here between guilt and responsibility is responsibility. Responsibility is the realization that no matter what your intent was, this is what's come out of this intent. And you are not responsible for someone else, how they choose to feel about the action that you have taken or what you have said. You are responsible, though, in dealing with the consequences of how you choose to deliver it. And yeah, past life residuals, exactly. Before I had the restraining order and I couldn't, yeah, okay. Everyone knows, restraining order in heaven and in hell. I'm stuck here, 3,300 years almost now, another 11 to go. Big party if I make it that long. Guilt, again, is tied very much with the self-judgment, okay? We judge ourselves based upon unexamined false expectations, societal programming, parental programming that we've absorbed and accepted somehow as our own. And then we judge ourselves, and in this judgment we feel guilty, and the guilty keeps us where we're at. And the only thing that can happen is if life can't move forward or backwards or left or right or up, it digs you a hole. Because the deeper and darker that hole gets, sooner or later that hole is going to cause you to want to get out of that hole. Again, we come back to those same words. I should have or should not have done that. I should or shouldn't feel this way. I should or shouldn't think this way. These are direct pushing up against what already is and will lead to stress, which will lead to more judgment and will lead to more guilt. And ultimately, when you combine all these three things together, we get the mother of them all, and that is fear. Fear is the killer. It is fear that paralyzes us completely. Fear locks you into place. Now, fear serves, and we have to know the difference. Fear is that which galvanizes you and grabs your attention. It's meant to bring you into a state of full awareness. But your mind will manufacture all sorts of events surrounding that fear. The greatest fear, of course, is the what if. Well, what if? What's going to happen if I do that? What if this goes sideways? What if I end up on the street? What if I end up immobile, unable to walk? We use, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of anything. Fear of life itself. Fear of change. Big fear. Again, most of these fears are subconscious and they've been programmed. I mean, we all have subconscious base fears, which are very good fears. You fear a giant 19-foot long snake. Good idea. You fear a hungry-looking tiger at the edge of the jungle staring at you. Good idea. To fear to make a change in your life because you're not sure about what's going to happen. Well, it's okay. You could do that. The universe adjusts. But if you wish to live a life of conscious growth, you have to learn to step beyond those fears. And Kim, thank you for being so honest. So many of us do and have lived, believe it or not, as a soldier, I lived in a state of fear for a long time. Not fear of being killed, not fear of being in the dark or alone, of being captured, but a fear of not being able to do my job one day. Of not meeting the rigorous physical requirements to stay in the Special Forces unit I was in, right? And that was a very real fear. A fear that drove me a lot of times beyond what was necessary. Now, there is another face of fear that is less talked about, and that face, of course, is anger. And that is one of the most destructive parts of fear. When we become angry, that fear has intensified and crystallized to the point where it's actually causing us pain. And anyone who brings up anything to do with this fear activates this pain within us, and we react unconsciously out of anger. If you are holding anger inside of your being, you must look closely at the anger and see what it is that you are still having issues and fearing. We also have another issue with fear, and that is known as societal fear transference, okay? And that happens as an indoctrination at an unconscious level. In the States, unfortunately, there is a large population in the States who fear immigrants, who fear Muslims. This is a societal fear transference that is occurring due to media, politics, a lack of information, disinformation, and quite frankly, something that is far away from the truth of our unified existence as one species on one planet. Walking through this fear is the only way. Fear exists only as a concept. It exists in the mind and the mind alone. Start with the little fears. I was watching a spider outside right before the meditation, and the spider was wandering. I thought at first it was wandering back and forth along the step. But what it was actually doing is it was spinning itself an intricate web, basically suspended just above the surface of the wood. And as I sat and watched it very closely, I noticed that the spider was indeed very beautiful. It had an amazing pattern on it. And in that case, you can see past that which would normally cause fear, i.e., a spider, perhaps venomous or poisonous, and instead see the beauty of the spider. And notice that indeed it has no thought or concern of me. It simply wishes to weave its web, to catch its prey. Walking through fear, the only way is to start with the little things in your life. You can also go back into your existence and you can take a look at the sum total of the major events of your life, and you will see that your fears, for the most part, are unfounded. And in the times that your fears did manifest, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to find that a lot of times it was the actions you took based on your fears that caused exactly what you fear to manifest. Well, what you think, so you shall be. This is true on a very egoic mind level and at a necessary level. Ego, again, is not something to destroy. It is something to grow and evolve, to work in harmony with your higher self. It is the realization that it is the tool, not the master of the tool. Kim says, I've had some of the most enlightening conversations with people of the Muslim faith. Oh, Kelly and I have talked about this many times. Go to a Sufi temple, go to a Muslim temple, go to a Jewish synagogue. If you can find a Gnostic Christian group, they are very open as well, and most of them believe quite differently than the mainstream. This is really about it. I mean, these are the four enemies to your conscious growth. The biggest point to take away from this is to learn to recognize it. Learn to recognize whether or not your thoughts are actually in alignment with what you know to be true. Your body, again, is this amazing instrument which is designed to do just that for you. Anytime you begin to feel yucky or not good, you have a knot in your stomach, or you should first look at what you're thinking, because your body lives in a perfect state of truth, a perfect state of alignment with your higher being. It is the ego, your false sense of self, that causes the body to feel a dissonant effect through your thought processes, and it acts as an alarm to show you that. Yeah, a beautiful idea, the Unitarian churches. All paths lead home. Every single path leads home. Even the path of Christianity will eventually lead home. They all do. Much love to you all today. That's really all I have. I hope this has been a good discussion. I hope it served you. I hope you understand, first and foremost, to be gentle with yourself. Respect and be grateful from wherever you are in your state of consciousness today. It is serving you. It is exactly where you need to be. You're in exactly the right situations. You're facing exactly the right puzzles. You are faced with exactly the right choices to make. And you can never, ever, ever truly make a mistake. Namaste to you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday.